so far. So I'll let you know before we begin that I have been assured for all of you UK fans that we will be out of here on time, okay? Because our presenter this evening is a big UK basketball fan. How many Southside grads in the room?
Southside? I guess there's one.
All right, very good. So is our presenter. I actually, though, am here to introduce to you Andrew Kopek, who Andrew and Lydia, his wife, and 2 daughters joined the church in September or October. Andrew's a member of the Faith Formation Committee. He's also a professor in the English department at PFW, and he is going to introduce our presenter.
Good evening, everyone. I've been really happy to see such a great turnout these past 3 weeks now. I'm really happy to see you all here. I'm very excited to introduce Zach Harl tonight. Before I do that, I had the good experience to be able to learn a little bit more about the history of the PCUSA and its approach to public education, its commitment to education. And so there's a lot of great stuff on the PCUSA's website, and like an overachieving student, I had too much stuff here. So I'll try to get this through this pretty quickly. But there's this great quote from the PCUSA that the educational mission of the church is to change lives and thereby to change the world. Presbyterians and Reformed Christians have always taken education seriously. That's in part because of its people of the Old Testament and the New Testament did so as well. So in the Old Testament, we see this throughout books of the Bible. Education is seen by the ancient Israelites as practical, a guide in worldly wisdom, instruction in the ethical way of life, and a vehicle with which to pass on traditions. The New Testament continues this emphasis on education, and we see this in the book of Acts. Writing of those early converts, the author states, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship. So I mentioned that there's a lot of great information about the PCUSA and its commitment to education. As the PCUSA wrote in 2010, free public education in particular, for all was instituted in Geneva as part of an overall reformation of society that was to attend the reformation of the church. Transformational education, which I know many of you have been committed to in various parts of your life. Transformational education accepts a partnership with God in the creation of a better world. So I think part of the thing that attracts many of us to education is that lifelong learning, that humility that we bring to the act of learning, and that is a value of the PCUSA insofar as we approach creation to learn rather than to exploit. Broadly defined, to educate is part of that calling to appreciate the value. So, of course, I appreciated Duncan Ferguson, retired administrator of the Association of Presbyterian Colleges and Universities, and he writes that we educate in the church, but we also create educational settings outside of the church that are inclusive and supportive, enabling and empowering ones that respect the dignity of all. These communities provide the human resources and behavioral norms that facilitate growth toward maturity and incarnate justice in policy and practice. I think that's why our committee really wanted to hear from someone like Zach to think about how we could partner with public educators. Okay, so how does First Presbyterian live out its mission of education that we know is centuries old? How can we help educators rekindle the gift of God that is within our community? So just to give us some quick background on Fort Wayne Community School students. According to the U.S. News and World Report, Fort Wayne Community Schools consist of 50 schools serving almost 30,000 students. The students are economically disadvantaged, many of them. 18.7% of Fort Wayne Community School students are English language learners, and I want to give a shout out to Vernell, who was an early member of the Teaching English as a New Language program at PFW. I'm sure many of our graduates are working with these students. So how can and how does First Press help? Well, we can recommit to the principle, as ECU USA puts it, of equal education, opportunity for all children. And that's from their report called Loving Our Neighbors, Equity and Quality in Public Education, which focused on K-12 education. We at present have a partnership with Washington and South Wayne Elementary Schools, where we assist both students and staff, and I believe we heard Lori, this last week, Saturday, testified to this in church about a month ago. We also have volunteers who tutor for study connections with these schools. Okay, I think we're about to introduce. Yes, okay. So this is where I'm going to potentially embarrass Zach and make his mom very happy. So these are some highlights of Zach's background. He attended Harrison Hill Elementary and graduated from Southside, where he is now principal. Graduate of then IPFW with elementary education degree and middle school endorsement. Was an athlete, is an athlete, participated in high school tennis, basketball, and baseball, plus college tennis. Taught Memorial Park Middle School, where my older daughter was bound next year for 10 years, math and social studies. Master's in Education, Indiana Wesleyan, and administrative license from IPFW. His roles in the Fort Wayne community have included assistant principal at Northwood and Portage, principal of Blackhawk Middle School, and now principal of Southside High School. Some personal information about Zach: wife Jana, and 3 sons, Evan, Casey, and Jordan, and 3 dogs, Murphy, Pepper, and Beckett. So it's not really me who's going to embarrass Zach, but our congregant, Jane McGeehan, who met with Zach. And she writes, I met with Zachary to invite him to participate in our series. I came away with such positive impressions. Here is a school principal who is passionate about his work, crazy about the students, capable and experienced, fun-loving, hardworking, enthusiastic, and a dedicated father to boot. So please let me welcome Zach Harl.
Thank you, guys. It's honestly an honor, privilege to be here with you this evening. I got the chance to come last week and listen to Mr. Paddock speak. It's not easy following a gentleman like that, so I'm not sure how we got lined up. I should have gone before, but we'll take it, the opportunity. One of the things that he talked about, his embarrassing moment before he spoke, was that he accidentally called 911. I'm going to try not to do that this week. My embarrassing story is from today. We were talking to our seniors at Southside as we're getting in that, that time to where some of them have kind of checked out a little bit, and we're trying to get them to graduation. And so we had a little heart-to-heart today, and one of my sons is a senior there, so he was part of the conversation, and a bunch of his friends that they've grown up before our eyes, just with our own son, Evan, and they came up to me after the serious talk and said, Mr. Harl, I'm not sure what you said. All we could focus on is that your button on your shirt popped off about halfway through. And we couldn't concentrate after that. So I got it sewed back on. So that's why nobody wanted to sit in the front row in case it happens again. So that's the embarrassing story from today. But that's just life, I guess, as a principal. So we'll roll with it. It's really hard. Like I said, it's a privilege to be here tonight to talk about Southside. I'm very passionate about Southside. I loved seeing some of the hands in the air and the chants from Southside grads. I'm a Southside grad myself, a parent of current Southside students. I have a senior and a sophomore there, and an 8th grader at Memorial Park that'll be there next year. And so it's just near and dear to my heart. And so it's 102 years of history, and you say you get 40 minutes to talk. Where do you start? And that makes it difficult. So it's just, I guess it's where we've been and kind of where we're going, and then possibly how the community around our building and this church can maybe help because it takes a lot of people to educate kids, especially now. So that's kind of where we're going. This is our current picture of our building. There's been some changes from maybe some of the times that some of you were there. So we'll just kind of go through here. Okay, so this is an older picture of our building, and some of you might remember the front a little bit like that. And so we were reminiscing, our staff was, just about some of the things around there and some of the changes that have happened over time. I was there at Southside during the renovation, the major renovation, graduated in '97. I'm only used to the new part, except the old gym that we still miss, and everybody misses. It's our library now. Love books, but it's still not the same as the old gym. But for us, we have about 1,450 students for us now. It fluctuates for us anywhere between 1,475 to 1,415, and that kind of a change of 50 students can happen in the same school year. We have a very transit population of students that come in and out, whether they move in from a different country and they're only here for a short amount of time, or maybe they just move within the city. And so our population can change quite a bit within a school year. Some of the data that was shared earlier on that introduction, our numbers are a little bit higher than the district average. For our district, we have about 75% of our students that would be considered low income. So socioeconomic status is below what would be expected of a family here in Fort Wayne. We have about 81% of our students would be considered minority students. Our highest population is Hispanic within our building. The district average for ELL students was 18%. Ours is at 39%, pushing 40% of our students are ELL students. And then we have about 15% of our students that get extra services with an IEP, the special education services. So those are kind of some of our current numbers there. This is just another old picture of Southside. Some things have changed. Some of those poles aren't there in the middle of the streets anymore. So that is, if you come to our school at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 2:30 in the afternoon, it's not a good time to come to Calhoun because we have kids crossing there and cars parked along there. It's a good time to avoid that area, if at all possible, so you don't get stuck there for a long time. 102-year history. I'm only the 8th principal at Southside, so honored to be obviously one of the 8. We have currently over 100 staff members. That includes our custodial staff, assistants in their classrooms, our cafeteria people, everybody that makes a building run. And it doesn't just start and stop with the teachers. It's all of those pieces together that work together to allow us to function daily. And then historically, I think this is one of the best parts too, is we have had in our history over 95 staff members that have spent at least 25 years teaching at or working at Southside. I think that just goes to show that, once people get there, they don't want to leave. And I think that's the great thing about that too. So I am not there yet. Still got a long way to go to get to 25, but we'll see how that goes. But like I said, just excited about that. We say once an archer, always an archer. And I think truly people feel that, whether it's an alumni or a staff member, they're truly excited about some of the things we've got going on in the history of Southside. So a couple things that I feel like what makes our building a great place to teach, to be a principal, to be a parent, to be a student. I felt these things were existent when I was there as a student, and was honored to go there. And I think as a parent, it's kind of why we sent our kids there. I live right across the street from Homestead High School, and even before I became principal at Southside, we decided that Southside was the place for our own kids because of some of these things. And I think one of the big things is the diversity that Southside has to offer. We have over 60 countries represented in our students and staff. We have one teacher from the Philippines, and then we also have students from all over. And the cool thing is, in our commons area, which is the hangout area in our building, we have over 60 flags of all the different countries that are representative of our students and staff in there. We also have 70 or more dialects spoken within the building too. And so I think that's it's a great thing. That's our real world. And so that's what I tell people too. When you come to Southside, it is preparing you for the real world, because you're going to have people from other countries, you're going to have people speaking other languages, different cultures. Things that are important to them might be different than things that are important to you. And so how do we all work together to make sure that we're successful outside of school? We also have the International Baccalaureate Program. We call that the IB program, just for short. We are the only one in northern Indiana that has that. That is a very prestigious program, academic program. It's nationally, globally recognized. And so our students not only can take AP classes, dual credit classes where they can get credit for IPFW or Trine or some of those other universities around here, but they can be in our International Baccalaureate Program. It's a very rigorous program that students would start their junior and senior year. So leading up to that, there is an IB program that's the middle years, which would be your 9th and 10th grade. We don't currently offer that, haven't offered that. We have the later years, which is the junior and senior. So leading up to that, any students that would be interested in the IB program would come in and take honors classes leading up to solidifying into the IB. For us, we can do, we call it kind of an a la carte item for IB or a full diploma IB. So if a student doesn't want to fully immerse themselves into that high of a rigorous activity because they are involved in a lot of other activities as well outside of just the classroom, so whether that is sports or arts or anything like that, that they can't give the full commitment to the IB program, then they might do the a la carte option. And the a la carte means I might be able to select a class or two here to still challenge myself and prepare myself for after high school and that college level coursework, but I'm not necessarily in the full diploma. Our students at the end of their senior year will take an assessment and they can score on that, and depending on how they score, they can get college credit for that as well. So if you type in any university and you go to IB credit, in the search menu, it'll tell you what score you have to get and then what kind of credit they will give you at the college level. So that's kind of nice because it's unique just to Southside. We're the only ones in Pointy schools, we're the only ones in this area. So a lot of our students that necessarily don't live next to Southside come to Southside for the IB program, which is kind of cool. The other thing is, over the last 5 years, we were part of a STEAM grant, which the STEAM is the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. You might have heard of STEM before, that just eliminated the A, but we're an art school, so we added the A in there, as part of a STEAM program. So what did that mean? For us, that's really project-based learning, hands-on experiences for our kids. The funding for that is now over, the grant's over. We got to spend lots of money, which was awesome. So when I took this job 2 years ago, they said, have you ever been part of a grant where you get to spend $1 million? I said, no, but that sounds fun, because it's not my money. So what does that mean? We got to spend it on interactive furniture, we got to spend it on 3D printers, we got to spend it on CAD machines, we got to spend it on t-shirt design makers. I mean, we got to spend money on all kinds of cool gadgets and furniture that allow our kids to collaborate on real-world projects, to design things, and to be able to come out with some kind of product. And so, although the grant is over, we're still going to be a STEAM school. Our classes will still interact on some of those project-based learning opportunities. Our students will still go to those labs to do some of that work. So that work will continue even though the funding for the grant is over. We're also a fine and performing arts school. We just had a dance collective performing at our school today. We have a show choir, our band, orchestra, jazz, theater. Theater production puts on a couple shows each year, which is always amazing. We have an art student at our school that just won the Lilly Award, so gets to go to college for free. It's our second year in a row that one of our students has won that. I'm so excited about that. She's actually creating some artwork for us. She just sold one of her pieces because somebody saw it in a gallery and said, would you be interested in selling that? And she said, yes, of course, you know. And they said, well, name your price and start high, you know. And so I think she made like $500-600 off this art piece already. So great opportunities for our kids. We do have photography classes, ceramic classes, lots of opportunities there. Then we have athletics. Part of the renovation when I was at Southside as a student was the Olympic-sized pool on our campus. So that's a part of the fun that happens at Southside. Our students get to experience how to swim, because many of them don't know, even when they come into high school. So our PE classes get to walk across the parking lot, teach kids how to swim. But all of the swim teams and clubs around town come to Southside for their practices. Besides a couple smaller schools that have pools, we're the main one with the Olympic-sized pool. So all activities around that happen at Southside, which is kind of cool. We just got a new turf field on our football field, so we don't have to worry about flooding and not being able to have activities and athletic events on our field. That's happened in the past, and it's not just a dirt mound, it is actual turf. So it looks like a grass field, and we get to have all kinds of activities out there now, which is great. During that process, because if you know the area of Southside, where that football field is, it used to be houses, it was a neighborhood. So it took a lot more dirt, it took a lot more stone, because they were running into basements that used to be there under the field, and the weight of the field put in there. Yes?
I gotta ask you this, with your new turf field, did you get a new turf track?
We got a resurfaced track. Now,
Okay.
if you know our renovation, they didn't do a very good job back in those days of designing that track. And the stadium is a little too close to track number 1. So what they did was they added an inside lane, because what I did not know in this process is in the state of Indiana, as long as it is 400 meters around, it can be really any shape in a circle. It can be a straight circle with no straight runways, or it can be an oval like it normally is. So our inside track is a little bit longer and a little bit sharper turns. So we haven't banked it or anything like that, so we can't do that. But it's still not ideal, but it's better than what we had. So we can actually post track meets now. So
I'm sorry, that was a loaded question.
no, it's okay. I knew there was probably something behind that. But it is nice because a lot of our facilities is over at what we call the annex. It's the old Elmer's. Are there any Elmer's grounds in here? Yes? Okay. So unfortunately, Elmer's is not there anymore. It is now part of the gravel pit. But we have taken over where the baseball fields were in Elmer's, the tennis courts over there. That is where currently our soccer team plays, our softball. We build a diamond over there. So we use those. We call that the annex. But it takes time to travel with our kids. We have to bus them over there every day, so that becomes difficult because transportation's an issue, as you've seen, I'm sure, in the news and everything else. We don't have enough drivers to get people places. So the nice thing about the turf is many of those practices can happen on the turf field on our campus without having to transport them over there just for a practice, which is kind of nice. Setbacks. COVID set us back quite a bit, I would say, in education. Not only for the students, but definitely for staff as well, in several different areas. One of the biggest things was literacy for us. As much as we had hoped that our kids would be at home during that time reading and doing their work, it didn't happen at the rate that we had hoped it would. And so, we had 1 to 2 years, about a year and a half for most kids, and some that have either stayed virtual, or when we came back, we were on alternative days. So we had half the kids in the building, the other half stayed on a remote day, and then they rotated. And so that time really set us back, and we're still trying to play catch up to those things. And so when I talk about literacy, we have about 30% of our kids right now reading at least 2 grade levels below where they should be. We have about 20% of our kids in high school, now that's 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, reading at a 4th grade level. So those are some of the things that we're dealing with. And so when we have a 9th grade biology class, that the textbook for that class is at a college level, and you have kids that are reading at a 4th grade level, there's a disconnect there. And as much as they want to try, they don't understand the language. And it's not because they're an ELL student and they're learning English for the first time, it's a vocabulary issue. And so part of the challenge for us is, how do we help bridge that gap for them? How do we increase the reading levels at a higher rate than just an average student? Because if they only go at the same rate as everybody else, they'll never catch up. And whether it is in the business world, whether it's in the college world, whether it's just in the career path, manuals, if you ever try to repair anything yourself, manuals are written at a higher level than a 4th grade level, I will tell you. As I've tried repairing toilets for the last 3 weeks, and spent more money on toilets than I've wanted to over the last 3 weeks. But anyways, so that's one of the challenges, and I think the setbacks that COVID definitely happened. Does it mean that all kids before COVID were reading at grade level? No. but it definitely increased the number that were falling behind. I think the other thing too is just mental health. For some of our kids, the safe place for them on a daily basis is school. That's the place where they can get 2 free meals, they have a bunch of friends that they can be around, and they have caring adults. And when they go home, unfortunately, if they have a home, a safe place, it might not be the same place every night, and they don't have the support pieces that we have at the school. And so I think that was obviously a factor on many of our kids too. Part of that, I will tell you, we've had an increase in vaping, and many of that happened when kids were at home, because a lot of that time, parents were out working still, and so kids were left alone. So some of that stuff on social media is a challenge, for sure, and vaping's become an addiction for many of our kids too, and something that we try and combat every day. And unfortunately, some of the kids don't know the side effects of that. And they can easily get those at some of the gas stations right around town, even though they're not of age. So I think that's, for our kids, that's one of the things that's been a struggle. For teachers and educators, I think one of the struggles is getting back into the routine of school, interacting. I would say we often got lazy during that time because we were just stuck behind a computer and teaching that way. And now we have a classroom, and it's easily just to get stuck behind the computer still, and not interacting and doing some of the cool activities that we used to do without those computers. I tell my teachers all the time, it's okay to shut those computers and do some hands-on fun activities within your classroom before we need to even open those up. And so that's been a challenge for our teachers too, is just getting back into that routine of it's okay to do some of these things that were in our toolbox for all these years before technology even came about. And so it's been a struggle, one of the things that we've definitely been working through with our staff as well. So you might have heard in the news too, we were a pilot for some of the programs for foreign community schools and their SAFER programs. I would say if you might have seen on the school board or in the news, our students, if you interviewed our students, they would say that they felt safe at Southside. I know there's rampant myths out there about how dangerous Southside is and how unsafe it is. I hear it all the time. I heard it when I was a student. I hear it as a parent. I hear it as a principal. But our kids don't feel that way. I didn't feel that way as a student. My own kids don't feel that way. And I would say that if you interviewed any of our students, they wouldn't feel that way. I think this program for us just allowed our kids to feel a little bit safer, to have that comfort of knowing that even though, because they see it in the news, of things that are not just happening here locally, but nationally. And so they want to make sure that when they walk in our doors, which is their safe place, that they are truly going to be safe within those environments. Doesn't mean that we don't have, our fights and those kind of things. Yes. Anytime you put 1,500 teenagers in a building, you're going to have issues. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it that we're perfect. We are definitely not. But I would say that our students feel safe within our buildings. So a couple of the things that we piloted this year was weapons detectors. So when our kids come into the building, they walk through, and any adult or guest in our building walk through a weapons detector. It is not going to... your keys won't set it off. It's not like at the Coliseum when you're going through and you have to take everything out and put it in a bucket and they pass it through. It's truly just monitoring for major weapons of destruction. Again, we didn't have an issue with that before, but this is just one more layer of safety for our kids. Our kids are just in the routine now. They walk through. It's not a big deal. They know some of the items they have to take out, like their computers will set it off. And so because of the amount of metal that's in those, so they pass those along to us. For me, it's a great opportunity because I get to interact with the kids right when they walk in the door. We can already tell from many of our kids if they're having a bad day at 6:50 in the morning when they start walking through our doors, because maybe they didn't respond the way that they normally do. And the nice thing is, some of our advocates that are part of here that I'll talk about, we'll see them and say, hey, why don't you grab them real quick and go have a conversation with them. Because we know that if we don't address it right then, that something later in the day could happen. Or that maybe there's something at home that happened that we need to be aware of that we can help support them. Because again, we have those resources at the building. So our students walk through those. Any of our guests that come in our building have to walk through those. Just a way for our kids to feel safer. Part of that program too, each building was given 2 student advocates. So for us, that's Coach Goodwill, he's our football coach too, and then Mr. Key. And so those 2, I have a Goodwill fan back there, huh? Great guy. And so they truly, they get in a lot of steps. If you track your steps, I guarantee we could probably add up everybody in this room and they get more than you in a day. And they are just constantly, they help us with the weapons detectors. They really just help us monitor students and build those relationships. They have kids that check in with them on a daily basis. They are constantly, they don't even have an office. They are constantly just walking the building, popping in the classroom, seeing if some of the students that they're working with are having a good day. Sometimes they'll just go in and sit in a class with them if they need a little extra support, but just really a relationship piece for that. And so that goes right along with, when we're talking about mental health, some of our kids just need that additional adult that's there to support them. And so those 2 guys have been great for us this year. We also have a mental health therapist that's tied just to our building, which is awesome. And so, like I said, we have lots of kids that are dealing with a lot of traumas that it just breaks your heart every time that they're telling you a story. And so it's nice that we have trained people within the building that can help with that process as well. And then our other pieces are peacemakers. This is a student-led conflict mediation group. They go through a training in the summer, an internship, where they're there for a few weeks and they identify issues within our own building, and then they try and come up with solutions for that, and then they're kind of our leaders in the building. Some of the best ideas come from kids, and they often hear too some of the things that are about to happen before us adults do, and they can do some mediation before it even gets to an issue that would come to us as well. So we also track our days of peace. It's one of the things that our students track. We track it by grade level, and then number of days of total peace, and then we have rewards as long as we meet some of our goals on that. I only have like 10 more minutes, man. I could talk to you guys forever about this stuff. So that's kind of like where we're at and some of the issues that we have. Kind of where we're going. For Florence Community Schools, we're making a whole redesign of our high schools and some of our experiences for our kids. And I think this is one of the coolest opportunities that we have here within the city, and definitely for Florence Community Schools and the students of Southside. I tell people all the time, one of the coolest things about my job is graduation day. Obviously had never been able to experience that as a principal, but to be able to give a speech and then have those kids come across that stage and shake your hand, and there's 350, 400 kids, and you know that took the work of pre-K teachers, elementary teachers, middle school teachers, and high school teachers, who some probably didn't ever think that would ever get to that part. And sometimes even at the high school, we're surprised that they got to that stage. But they did, and so that's exciting. But I will tell you, it's probably one of the most disheartening things too, because you know that for many of them, as they're walking across that stage, yes, they get that paper, but they have no idea what they're going to do with it the next day. They have no idea. They don't have a plan. And in that aspect, I think we've failed many of our kids. Some of our high-achieving kids that have, the support at home, they know what they're going to do. They're either going to go into the workforce, they're going to the military, they're going to go into college. But I would say a high percentage of our kids have no idea. They're currently working at a restaurant. They're making for what they think is good money. And they think, oh, this is great, I can just do this. But that's not a long-term plan for them that's sustainable to be able to have their own family and some of that. And some of them just don't even know what's out there for them because all they know is what they've grown up in. So what happened in this process, we have like 400 people out of the Parkview Miro Center out on DuPont. That included students all the way from elementary to high school. Within 40 schools, we had community members, we had educators, current and past, we had administrators, we had business people, because it's not just a education issue, it's a business issue too, that businesses around here don't have qualified employees that they can hire. They don't have the skills necessary when they come out of high school or they come out of college with the skills that they need specifically for their businesses. And that's why there's all these jobs out there. That's not just an education problem, because trust me, if you want a job, I can get you one. on Southside, we have plenty of openings, but that's across, this area. And so we got all those people in the room and walked through this process of what are some of the skills and attributes that our kids need to become business people. What skills and attributes do you need them to have when they come out of high school? Because some of them will just go right into the workforce. Some of them might go get a 2-year degree or 4-year degree, but what skills do they need to have? So on the far left is our elementary one. That's our Explorer, them kind of learning more about these opportunities. Our Connector, that's kind of our middle school people. I spent 20 years in middle school. It's just a different animal at the middle school.
Yeah.
You've got kids with different hormones going on and they don't know what to do with. And they're just kind of lost. And so that's kind of our Connector. We're trying to connect them. And then obviously our Portrait of a Graduate. I would say Ford NGL is kind of the umbrella of the Ford Motor Company. It's their educational piece, and they're kind of walking us through this process. And it's happened in Akron, it's happened in Nashville with really good success. And so it's not a program, but it's just a process that they're walking us through so that we make it our own. But I will tell you, when we went into that, they wanted us to create an ideal graduate. That's what they called it, an ideal graduate. And actually, one of our Southside kids that was there, she raised her hand and she said, "I don't like that term. I don't like that term." She said, "I don't want to be pegged into what is your ideal graduate. We're all different, especially at Southside. We're all different. But my portrait might be a little bit different than the other people's, but we're all going to end up at the same place." Ford NGL changed ideal graduate, not just for us, but now that we go to all these other schools too that we're working with across the state of Indiana that are going through this process, it's not even called ideal graduate anymore. It's called portrait of graduate, which I think is pretty cool. And I think that's the power of it, is our kids' voice was heard. And we would have the kids come up on stage and they would say at the end, and they would ask them, like, "What do you hope to happen out of all of this?" And they said, "We know that it won't be in place when we graduate, but I have siblings, I have cousins, I have nephews, and I'm holding you accountable for all this stuff you're talking about doing. I want it to be in place for when they graduate." And I think that's holding us accountable. And having that many business people and community building people that are a part of it in the whole process, I think makes it sustainable over time, which is exciting. Because if you've been in education, you know ideas come and go about every 3 or 4 years, and that can be frustrating. But I think this one is sustainable for sure. I'm not going to worry about the video. I know we did all that, but I got so much more to talk about. So kind of what does that mean for us at the building level, and how does it trickle down to elementary and middle school? For us, it's really about getting kids experiences, even at the elementary level. Every elementary kid goes to the zoo. They learn about animals and all that. Great, that's fine. Let's continue to learn about animals. But what we also want to interject in there is, what are some of the careers? Start talking to kids about careers early on. What are some of the careers that are involved in people that work at the zoo? And is that something that is an interest of kids? And so it's really just building off kids' interest and finding a pathway for them. I will tell you right now, when kids come to us, our counselor sits down with them, says, "What do you like to do?" They might say something, they might not say anything at all. "Oh yeah, we think you'll like this teacher, why don't you go into that pathway?" And that's kind of how it's done now, unfortunately. And it maybe doesn't fit the true interest of the kid at that time. And so that's when we have trouble of they're disconnected with the content that's happening in those classrooms. And so part of this is helping them find their interest, their pathway early on. So a big change for us will be Freshman School of Success, Freshman Academy is what we're going to call it. Within ours for Southside, we will have 3 houses, and we'll have teams of teachers. So as you can see up there, that'll include a math teacher, a science teacher, an English teacher, a class that we are calling Freshman Seminar, an ELL teacher, and a SPED teacher. Because for us, we want all 3 of our houses to look like Southside High School. We don't want one to be where we shove all of our special education students. We don't want one to be our high academic. We don't want one to be our ELL. That's not what Southside looks like, so we want all of those to represent all of those groups within our community. So within those, they'll have smaller learning communities. Those teachers within those will have all the same kids. So 100 to 150 kids, they will all share those kids. That collaboration will be more cohesive, I would say, because right now you come into high school, kids have 7 different classes, 7 different expectations, 7 different things that aren't connected. And so with this smaller learning community, we're really excited about that. Developing some of that collaborative culture for our kids. Some of these skills that we talk about, communication, creativity, innovation, those are some of those skills that were on that portrait of a graduate that we're already starting to get our kids experiences in. Through that process, and that freshman seminar class will be a part of 3DE. And so 3DE is a JA program. And really like no other JA program that I've been a part of. They will give them students within those groups in their freshman year, case challenges is what they call them. Some are local, some are national. And so a business will come to the group and say, here's something that we are trying to figure out within our company. How can you help us? What are some ideas that you have that you want to bring that to present to us on our board that we can make things better? And so Parkview Hospital is one of those that presents case challenges. Steel Dynamics has, Franklin Electric has. For us, Hagerman Construction will be one of ours next year. They're Southside grad as well. So they want to partner with us. We'll have Parkview, and then there's national competitions as well. So Arby's came to our students and said, that's a national one. And they said, we know our demographics of people that shop or that come to buy food, roast beef at Arby's are typically 30 to 45-year-old white males. They said, that's our demographic. We know that, but we want to expand that. We're not going to change our roast beef, okay? But how do we draw in some of these other groups, a younger crowd, an older crowd? How do we draw them in? And our kids get to come up with different ideas for that company. They present it to our school, and then they present it at the national level to Arby's representatives. Snyder High School in Northside has already been in that process. Snyder got runner-up last year in that national competition, which is kind of cool. So it's real problems that are brought to our kids who sometimes create some of the best ideas that I think we can come up with. So that's part of it. They'll do 6 of those their freshman year. Okay, so freshman year happens about at the semester. Our kids will decide through a lot of their experiences, us talking about our pathways. When I say about pathways, that is a focus within their education that they want to pursue. So we'll have a big ceremony. They'll pick their school of success. And so all of our Florida community schools will have the same 3 houses or schools of success, and this will go into their sophomore, junior, and senior year. So the first one is the School of Health and Human Services. We have Manufacturing, Engineering, Technology, and Trades, and then School of Business and Arts. Each of our high schools will have those. Those are common across those. Within those schools, we have our own pathways. Okay, so that's where it starts getting narrowed down in that funnel and more specific. So for Southside, under Health Sciences and Human Services, we will offer these 3 pathways. So our kids could, on-site, get a pathway, which is part of their graduation requirement through the state of Indiana, in either Human and Social Services, which is like social work. If anybody's interested in like teaching or anything like that, that would be in the Human and Social Services, Hospitality Management, and then Exercise Science. For us, we already offer Human and Social Services and Hospitality Management. That hasn't changed for us. The new one that we're offering starting next year is Exercise Science. How did we come up with these pathways? Part of that was asking our kids. What are your interests? Because the things that we had as pathways before might not be interest of our kids now. So why do we keep funneling them into a pathway that's not of interest? Also, what is locally needed? So within Northeast Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, what are jobs that are out there that if our kids graduate just from high school, can they get a job in that field because it's of an interest to them? What if they went to a 2-year degree? What if they went to a 4-year degree? What jobs and how much money can they make within those jobs? So we looked at that data. We also looked at funding for us because these, we can get funding from the state. And so that's a factor. Obviously to be able to do different things within education, you need funding for it. So some of these classes, the state will give you $1,000 per kid to offer these. Some, it's like $100 a kid. So there's a big factor in that as well. And then we also looked at, do we have teachers that can teach some of these classes? The big interest one for our kids right now, one of the most growing health pathways is Exercise Science. Lots of jobs still available for that. We have people here locally that can teach that. So that's a big pathway for us. So when I talk about we have on-site and then we have off-site. So off-site Within that same school of success, we have all of these. Okay? And the reason it has all of the high schools down there is because all students from any of our high schools can get a pathway in this. So we talk about on-site, strictly at Southside. We talk about off-site. If a student says, hey, can I have a pathway, does Southside offer criminal justice? Before I would say, no, we don't. That's done at Anthus or at a different facility. Now our terminology is yes, you can get a pathway at Southside in criminal justice. Some of those classes would be off-site, but you're still a Southside student. You're still a Southside student. So it's either on-site or off-site. I'm just going to click through some of those. So for the manufacturing, ours will be radio, TV, design technology, and then industrial maintenance. Design technology, industrial maintenance will be new to us at Southside. Radio, TV is one that we've had for a while. Design technology, currently we have interior design for our students. We have lots of students that are interested in that just because our teacher is really cool. It doesn't mean that they all want to be interior designers. And there aren't a ton of jobs for interior designers in Fort Wayne, Indiana. But part of that program and that pathway currently with interior design, the part that they are the most interested in is the design piece. Whether it is construction or designing model homes or cars or whatever. That's where the design technology focus is, and so that's why we're going to move toward that. Industrial maintenance is basically any business that has lots of large equipment. They need people that worked on those, and they can't fill those jobs. And so we're hoping that our skills will do that as well. I'm just going to click through some of these real quick. Business and arts, you still get a civic arts pathway, so if a student is totally just enamored in arts and performance, they can still get a pathway in that. Business administration, marketing, and sales are already similar for us. And then our AMP Lab, if any of our students are interested in entrepreneurship, they would, their junior or senior year, take classes down at our new AMP Lab, which is at Electric Works, which I know they talked about last week. So I think part of this is, again, not that things are going bad, but how can we better serve our students? Like I talked about with at that graduation, where our kids come across that stage and they have no idea how they're going to use that diploma. We feel like our experiences that we will be able to offer them now will be better than any experiences we'd be able to do in the past. And so it's really just helping our kids, whether they want to go into the Army, whether they want to go into college or into the workforce, how can we better prepare them for that life, whatever's better for them. I would tell you, when I was at Southside, you know, if you were deemed smart, you were expected to go to college. If you were not deemed smart, they were expecting you just to go to the career academy and learn a trade. Now, it's more of a level playing field because you can come out with a trade and a certification and make a lot more money than we are in the education field without the student loans. And so not looking at it as a deterrent. I would say in our top 10 students last year at Southside, probably half of them went straight into the workforce because they already got several certifications at our Anthus Career Academy, and they're making really good money already. It's a viable career that's a need. And some of you might have had them at your house doing work at your house, because I hire them right now too. So, so I think that's just a different way for us in our community to look at it. That we're still going to push kids to go to college if that's the path that they want, but understanding and supporting kids that maybe that's not the direction for them. So, how can you help us? It truly does take a village. I mean, we've got, as I talked about, kids that are coming from situations that it just brings tears to your eyes every day, and it's those kids that show up on a daily basis because we are their safe spot and safe place for them. How can you help? We need guest speakers to talk to kids about careers, talk to kids about opportunities. We have a program called the Grannies and Grampies. That's part of our Peace program, Peacemakers program too. So we have from some different churches around town that they come in and spend lunchtime with our kids. They just have a table, they hand out some candy, and they just have conversations with our kids. And the excitement of our kids when they know the Grannies and Grandpas are coming is just cool. And so they just kind of hang out. You know, they flock to that table. Our group, the Grannies and Grandpas, came on Tuesday, that's just yesterday, I guess, we did SAT testing. And so we only had our 11th graders in the building. They were there at the door greeting them, saying, hey, do your best today, good luck. Just that extra word of encouragement, which is just awesome. It goes a long way. Sometimes the kids act like they don't want it, but they really do love it. So, and the grannies and grandpas hold them accountable too. So I think that's a good piece too. Internships, job shadows. If you know, that's one of our things too within this process of Schools of Success. Is our hope is that by the senior year, most of our kids are not even in our building full day. They're doing internships, they're doing job shadows, so that they have some of that work experience. That's one of the major reasons why Florence Community Schools changed our high school hours. It's early now. We start at 7:10. Our doors open at 6:50, and we're out at 2:25. The main reason for that, a couple reasons, but one of them is before we were getting out at 4 o'clock, 4:30. A lot of businesses shut down at 5 o'clock, you know what I mean, downtown here. So there aren't that many opportunities for internships or job shadows when a kid's not getting out of school until 4:30 and can't get there in time. So some of those opportunities, the doors were already closed before our students even got out of school. So we have lots of kids that are doing internships during the school day. We have a lot that are doing after school, which is awesome. So if you know businesses, if you know people that are willing to take on interns as students, we're always looking for opportunities, different opportunities for our kids for that. As little as school supplies, we still have kids that we are providing the school supplies for because, as we talked about, you know, we have almost 80% of our kids that come from underprivileged houses, and so we're providing book bags, pens, pencils, the daily supplies for our kids on a daily basis. Adopt an archer, so that's just a student that we've identified in our building that maybe just needs that regular person just to check in on them, ask them how their day's going. You know, we have some that just touch base with them once a week. It could be through Zoom, it can be in live, coming into the building, and it's a 5-minute conversation, 10 minutes. How are your grades? How's your attendance? What's going on? How, you know, everything okay? Are you eating at home? Or are these your only 2 meals? You know, long breaks, spring break and that is difficult for many of our kids. Sometimes their behaviors ramp up around those times because they know they're not going to have the safe place of school over an extended amount of time. And they don't have 2 meals a day over that extended amount of time. So Adopt an Archer is just a good program as well. And then honestly, the biggest one is just spread a positive message about Southside. There's negative things that are said about us by people that just don't know because they're not there with us on a daily basis. And so that's probably the most disheartening piece about it, because if people come in the building and they see the things that are happening, again, we're not perfect. I'll never say that we are. Our kids, you know, they're kids. They're going to make mistakes. They have their issues, but they're good kids. And so when I hear things from other people in the community about, oh, you go to Southside, that's disheartening, and it's not true. I'll tell you a story, and then I'm going to let you ask questions and get out of here because we got a basketball game to watch. But I'll tell you, my own son, he works at Kroger out southwest by our house, and is bagging a lady's groceries, and she said, "Do you go to Homestead?" And he said, "No, I don't go to Homestead." And as they're continuing the conversation, and she said, "Oh, you just look like you would go to Homestead." And he goes, "Oh yeah, well I don't, you know." She said, "Well, where do you go?" And he said, "I go to Southside." And she literally jumped back. She jumped back, and he said, "Dad, I've never experienced that." You know, and so, sorry, I get emotional. But you know, it's just, you hate for your kids to have to experience that, you know. And he said, "I felt like she thought I was going to stab her or something. I'm just bagging her groceries." You know, and that's tough. That's tough to explain to your son, and you know that happens to so many of our kids. And it's just hard. And so I think that's even if you can't do the first bullet points, just talk about the things that we have going on there. And if you hear people saying negative things, follow it up with a positive of things that we're doing in our building, and that just goes a long way. So, thank you. And I'm just kidding. I will stick around if you have questions. I've got the game recording. We're good. Yes.
I'm not going to make a question, but I'm going to make a statement. There have been several really.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. There have been several excellent articles in the newspaper on what's outside. And that one young lady said when she started there, she's a senior now.
Yep.
I thought that was, she said, nobody looked up, everybody cowered down. She said, it's a whole different place. And I want to give you credit for what you've done.
Thank you. I tell our teachers, they've got it bad, honestly, because, like I said, I'm an alumni, I want the school to be successful, I'm a parent. I tell them, if I do not feel comfortable putting my own 2 boys in your class, why would I feel comfortable putting somebody else's kid in your class? So I have high expectations for them. And again, as educators, and you that have been teachers, you can plan the best lesson that you want, and sometimes it fails miserably. That's okay. That's real life. That's in anything. And so, but we try and be better every day. You know, and I say that's, as long as I know you're doing that, we're gonna be fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like you trade like a science, technology, or training. It's pretty good. But do you connect any local high-tech company, school, any making connect to a local high-tech company for provide for like an internship or something, something like that?
That is what we need, honestly, because we don't have that. We have lots of students that are interested in computer science.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yep.
working. Yeah, I'm working at BA system. Okay, I do know last year, company sponsor Warsaw-based high school senior. So I don't know how many senior they came over, like a 40, 50 students that came over. They tour inside the company. Then I do know they promise any hire or not, but I do know these days manpower problem, also so very possibility, they have connect with what the school connect with company, then any when they're gonna interview, okay, we sponsor this high school, so they can very possibility without any experience, they can hire. Also, company they give an opportunity every employee up to $12,000 tuition system per year. So I do know I'm test engineer like 37 years at this company. Then a lot of young people who start factory work, but now they promote like engineer. So many. I sent so many people like that. So you probably need to connect. They have a lot of tech companies. You don't know, they have Harris, BA system, and there's a lot of companies. Ultra Electronic. They most this company they employ employment like over 1,000 employees. They continue their growth business right now. So I do know BA system last year more than 300 operators they hired.
That's great.
It's really long.
So we need to connect.
Yeah. So we talking.
Okay, we have a question back there.
I can speak my teacher's voice. My question is, do you have an ICANN program or something similar to that for students with limited abilities? That will only, I don't know whether it's still called a certificate of attendance as opposed to a graduation. Thank you.
We don't necessarily have that program. I will tell you, they combined our program with Northrop. And so many of our students now that would normally have gone to us have transitioned out to Northrop High School for various reasons. Part of that is just staffing, to be honest. And many of those kids were separated even though they lived right across the street from each other. And so to continue those relationships from our high school, or from our middle school to our high school, and they had more space than we did at Southside. So they did that. We do have some kids that graduate with just their certificate, even though we don't get credit by the state for that. So it hurts our graduation rates, but it's still highest that they could achieve. And so we have some. but not as many as we did before because that our major program moved out there
And where is it? Would you repeat?
at Northrop High School.
Northrop.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Northrop and then Northside has a program too, to where many of their students would get their certificate. Yep.
You mentioned the student advocates, you know, that run the building.
Yep.
I hope this isn't gonna sound snippy, but do you have any women who do that? Because I'm just wondering how many teenage girls, if they're having issues, are gonna go to the football coach.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. So for our building, we have 2, and those 2 positions for us are males. I will tell you, as they have hired for the other high schools, they've really tried to find a male and a female. And so currently for us, no, not in those positions. We have a lot of female, all but one of our counselors are female. Our mental health therapist is a female. 3 of our APs are females. Some of our other support staff are females. So although not in that position, our females have people that they feel comfortable going to on a daily basis that are always in the hallway, you know, that they can connect with on a daily basis. So, but ideally, yes, I love these guys, but I really wanted a male and a female, just because of that. And bathroom supervision, too, because that's where a lot of the struggles happen, too. Yeah.
I don't really have a question, I just have a comment. I just wanted to lend you another voice of support. I live in Williams-Woodland Park neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so the thing you're describing with your son is very similar to what all of my neighbors have experienced. And among them is Angelo Mounty, who's kind of in charge of the whole
Peacemaker
thing.
Yep.
So I, you know, at various times I've just kind of leaned into it, and people are like, "Where do you live?" And I'm like, "On the south side." You know, Pontiac and Creighton. Pontiac and Creighton. Just wait to see what the face, how the face reacts. So that's one approach to have for your son.
Yep.
But I think it also speaks to like what you guys have done. The Peacemakers was a pilot program. Now it's with the new grant and everything. It's being expanded into all the high schools, I think, over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So, you know, Southside's on the forefront of all that stuff.
We are.
So we just need to tell people that and let them know.
We have gotten a lot more positive press than I think in the past. But you know, if any kind of bad activity happens anywhere on the south side of town, for some reason the news feels like they have to just bring up the south side school picture. And they're like, "Oh, it happened near south side." It could have been 3 miles away from south side, but for some reason that's like the what everybody knows. And so, yeah, that's unfortunately what we get sometimes. But we have got a lot more positive press, which is great.
It's okay. At the end of this session, we're going to have to make a decision where we want to put our efforts into the community. What would you say would be the biggest way that First Pres could help you in any kind of form that you see that a church and this bunch of people could do?
I would say 2 things: inside the building and outside the building. Outside the building, talking positive. Everybody can do that because everybody's going to be somewhere, and you can share a message about something you heard about Southside that was positive. I think that's the first thing that everybody can do. Whether you can give up time to come into our building, we would love people to come into our building. We'd love more people on our grannies and grandpas because we have more kids than we have grannies and grandpas. And so, you know, I think it's in twofold. It's if you have a little bit of extra time and you can come into our building and be part of our school and our culture, we'd love to have you. We're going to open our arms up and really work with our kids, because even just those daily conversations, I mean, they come like once every 2 weeks. It's not enough. Our kids would want more, but you have to have the bodies to do it. So that would be a start, because I think one of the things too is you have to build the trust of our kids. Sorry, because they've had so many people in and out of their lives that it takes a while for them to trust you. And so just getting a presence, they've started to trust our grannies and grandpas because many of them, their grandmas and grandpas have raised them. but also because they've been consistent for a year and a half now. And so even though it's just a meet and greet, they feel comfortable sharing things with them in small doses to where now we can use grannies and grandpas in a little bit more capacity. But they have to have that face-to-face first.
Do you also have any kind of a database for like people, when I look around here, I see people that have certain talents, certain things that in their background, like academy students that have gone on and professional people, that they could say, look, I could come into a class and give you an idea of what this particular job would entail. Do you have a list like that people can?
Yes, we can get one for sure. I will tell you with these pathways that we are going to offer, we don't have all the certified people to teach those that we're going to need. And so this is a process. So really in 2 to 3 years, we're going to need what we call workplace specialists. Maybe they're not necessarily educators, but we need them to come in for a class period every single day and teach that because they're the expert in that field. We would still have a teacher in the room to help support, but they're the expert to teach, hey, what skills do you need? That's what we're gonna need for people. And some of the businesses that are a part of this, they are saying, I will hire that person, I will pay their salary. They're not gonna count as your allocations because our allocations are limited, but we will put that person in your building a half day, a full day, because our return is gonna be that you're gonna have kids graduating from high school that are going to have the skills we need to hire them right out of high school. That's going to be their return. And so that's what we need too, is if you know business, I need exercise science, I need maintenance tech people, I need digital design, all those. And even if it's not just teaching a class, it's coming in as a guest teacher to talk about your experiences within that field.
I think we have some of them in the room. I won't name any names.
Yeah.
I would just say, as an alum, I'm really pleased. I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Somebody else had their hand up. I'll take like 2 more. Okay.
As a parent of 2 kids who graduated from Southside and as someone in the neighborhood, I want to thank you too. I think the last time I saw you, you were a year ahead of my son.
Yes.
So
a little less hair and a few more pounds as the button today tells.
But no, I want to thank you because Southside is a real integral part of our neighborhood. And I will say the kids I know that go to Southside now, their parents are very, very happy with the education they're getting. And I know we were very happy with the education our kids got, and it prepared them well for what they're into now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. I was looking forward to it. We are transplants, newly residents in Fort Wayne from Arizona. I'm just curious, do you have a staffing shortage of teachers like they do in Arizona? We can't beg people to teach.
For sure. Just in our building alone, I've got 5 long-term subs that have been with us all year long. Because part of that was we couldn't get it hired before the school year started. 3 of those positions, we were given extra allocations because the number of students that they thought were coming to Southside and the number of students that showed up at Southside was a lot off. And so, but the hard part is, it's great to have that allocation. Being able to fill that after, the job fairs and everything else, it becomes very difficult. So we've been blessed that we've had 5 great people that have been there every day. They show up every day, and they, work with our students, and the rest of our staff really helps make sure lesson plans are good and grades and everything else like that. But yes, we definitely have a shortage. We've had those positions posted all year. I get a couple applicants here and there. Classified assistants, so classroom assistants, we can't hardly fill those. But part of that problem is they don't get benefits. And so, for those, you can go work at McDonald's and make more money than the struggles of trying to raise literacy scores. Yeah. So it is definitely an ongoing concern.
Sure. Hey, Harl.
Hey.
I was at Memorial Park when we were there.
Yeah.
And then I went on to Southside and graduated in 2008.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the online learning and virtual learning. how do you feel that Southside is doing to be able to make that accessible to all of the students because of the differences in language barriers and financial differences, ability for people to be able to have Wi-Fi in their home.
Yep.
Everybody seems to think that we got cell phones, we've got that way.
Yep.
But then also, I mean, being able to get a good Southside education from a computer screen,
Yep.
I mean, it's a tough thing. Just
For sure.
enlighten us on that.
Yep. That's very difficult. I would argue that although you can get the learning, you miss out on a lot of the other pieces. That social interaction, that collaboration, that mental health support that you need is a lot more difficult through a computer screen. So Foreign Community Schools has a virtual academy too. So if students that really struggle within those social interactions need that environment, we still have that available to them. They wouldn't technically be necessarily at that point Southside students, they're virtual academy students. So actually my wife's one of those teachers in the virtual academy. So it works really well for some kids and in their environment because they really struggle on some of that in a building, although it's only 1,400 and that's small compared to some of our others. Still, it's a big environment for some kids. And so we do have that as an option. I would say you're right, we have families that do not have reliable internet access at home. That's why we try and do as much as we can in the building. Very few of our assignments are sent home. If you're not working on it in class, you might have some things to do outside, but if you really put forth the effort, you can do it there. We have after school opportunities too on Tuesdays and Thursdays where our teachers, we have a group of teachers that will stay until 4:30, 5 o'clock for kids that might need some extra help, some tutoring. It's all free. We partner with City Life, which is right across the street of Oakdale for us. So they do tutoring and have all hours of the day, and they have internet access for kids too. There's opportunities out there, but we don't necessarily have it for all kids. And so some of them get bussed into us, and so then when they're bussed back on the other side of town, that becomes difficult as well. But we have some of our kids that live within 3 blocks of Southside. For middle school or for elementary school, they might go to Fairfield Elementary. They're bussed all the way out to Shawnee Middle School, and then they are brought back to Southside for high school. And that's a disconnect too. And so a lot of that was done way back in the day for racial balance within our city. But I think we're kind of past that now. We have, group enough minorities that live all over the city, So, but it becomes difficult on those because they're on the bus for a long time too. So.
You've been fantastic. Thank you so much. Can you stick around for 5 minutes in case somebody has another question?
Sure.
Okay, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. Next week, folks, we have our arts panel. Brittany Hall with the Executive Director of the Philharmonic, John O'Connell from PFW for the theater, and Amanda and Charles Shepard from the Art Museum will be here. So that's going to be a 4-person panel. You won't want to miss that either. And then, of course, 2 weeks from tonight will be our big brainstorm session. I want you here. I need you here for that, okay? So we can put these sorts of things on the list of things that we should be doing. So thank you so much, and thank you for everything you're doing. I appreciate it, and we will spread the word. Yes, we will be evangelists for Southside. We can do that. We can do that. So thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.